Is an economic recession on the way? Maybe we're even in one. What does that mean for fundraising? Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the Fundraising School, and I'm joining you today just to review some of the latest economic data and think out loud about what that means for the prospects of an economic recession and what are the consequences for fundraising. When my colleagues and I teach for the Fundraising School, we receive this question all the time. In fact, just about every course I teach, invariably somebody will raise their hand and say, will we have an economic recession? And of course, the answer to that question always is yes, because in a market economy, recessions tend to happen at least once a decade, sometimes even more. And then that's confounded by, in 2023, 2/3 of economists, this was the national news, right? 2/3 of economists are saying we're going to have a recession this year. And then we didn't have one. And then 2024 started and 2/3 of economists said, we're not going to have a recession this year. Of course, they were the same ones who predicted a recession the previous year and they were wrong. So could we believe them this time around? And now we have some new economic data here in the middle of 2024 that is bringing this question back to life. Are we going to have an economic recession? The question really then isn't if we're going to have one, it's when we're going to have one. And the answer might be now or very soon or not really, maybe not really soon. And again, the data are coming from different directions. Regardless of that, the implications for fundraising are the same. So let's take a look, first of all, at some of this economic data. So first of all, the July unemployment report, 4.3%. Now, few decades ago, when I was formerly studying economics, my Nobel Prize winning professor said, if the unemployment rate is under 5%, that's full employment. We're happy when unemployment is under 5%. That basically means anybody who wants a job can get one. And most of the folks who are unemployed for a very short amount of time. They have moved or they unfortunately suffered a layoff, but there's another place that they can go for employment. And so now we're at 4.3%. So historically, that's great. It's still one of the lowest rates in 5-6 decades. However, it's the highest since 2021, when we were still suffering some of the worst effects of the coronavirus. And so that's sort of that good news, bad news scenario. That good news, historically, 4.3, not all that bad. Bad news, it's really spiked up compared to about 3 years ago. Now, more good news, bad news. In fact, mostly good news here. A big reason for the spike is an increase in the number of people looking for full-time employment. That's actually great news. That's a very optimistic behavior. That's a behavior that says there are jobs out there and I'm going to go get one, right? The kind of psychology behind that tends to be very positive. And that's also supported by a data point that the increase in unemployment is not being caused, at least not yet, by a larger number of layoffs. There also might be a blip in the data. Remember that tropical storm, Cat 1 hurricane that hit Texas in June? That caused some temporary job displacement. So there may just be some noise in the data that gets washed out in August. However, two main bedrocks of the economy, construction and manufacturing, have had a summer decline. In fact, manufacturing, the way they look at the data, technically is in a contraction. Think of recession. And again, these are bedrocks of the economy. These are higher paying jobs. They have ripple effects through so many other jobs in the economy. And those are now in a downward trend. All right, unemployment, that's one category. Another one is just the economy overall. You look at the gross domestic product. That data comes out, those data come out quarterly. And at the end of June, we heard about the second quarter, right? So April, May, and June. And the economy grew at 2.8%. Not great, not horrible, kind of Goldilocks. We take 2.8% forever. That's not so bad, right? That's a good, healthy place to be. And we look at the stock market. The S&P 500 in the first 6 months of the year grew 16% after growing more than 20% the previous year. In fact, the stock market has just about doubled since the end of the Great Recession. The stock market has gained about 50% since the worst of the coronavirus pandemic. So a lot of growth in the S&P 500, which, as you listen to this podcast often, you know this, when the S&P grows from January to December, charitable giving tends to grow the following year. Of course, when it goes down January to December, charitable giving tends to go down the following year. So right now, big positive gain in 2023, great start to 2024 until the July employment data came out, right? And the stock market really started correcting. And remember, here's the key about the stock market. The stock market predicts the future. When the stock market is going up, what the investors are saying is, the economy is going to be better in the future. I want to buy now at what I think is a lower price because that price is going to be higher and I'm going to enjoy those gains when the economy improves. When the market's going down, people are selling. They're predicting a downward economy in the future and they want to get out now before their prices go down lower on their stocks. And so the reaction of the stock market after the July employment report would be kind of a flashing yellow light regarding the prospects of a recession. Then get a little wonky on you here. There's this one data comparison. If you look at unemployment in 3-month windows, all right, think of the average unemployment rate in a 3-month window and compare that average to the same 3 months the previous year, okay? When the difference is more than 0.5 percentage point greater, we tend to be either in or very close to being in a recession. And with those July unemployment data, we are now more than 0.5% higher for May, June, and July, the average, than we were for May, June, and July in 2023. So that, again, could be a flashing yellow light that we're either in or on the heels of a recession, except the economist who designed that measure said maybe not. Again, another one of these good news, bad news type stories where she said, it could be that we're just seeing gains from, historic lows economically. It could be that the economy is just rebalancing in a healthy way, and perhaps it's too soon to tell. So it's something to watch for going forward. All of this is adding up. When you read the national news daily, they're saying like, okay, now these folks, the National Bank, the Federal Reserve, who controls the interest rates, probably going to do a rate cut now in September, right? Everybody's kind of expecting now that that's going to happen. And when that does happen, a rate cut is made to spur economic growth, avoid a recession, get out of a recession, right? So it's something to keep an eye on. However, flip side of that coin is that it could take a few months for the economic gains to be realized after a rate cut. So what does this all mean? Again, good news, bad news, good news. Are we in a recession? Are we going to be in a recession? Is it close? Is it still distant? Here's the takeaway for fundraisers. Remember this. Fundraising is always based on your relationship with your donors and centered around each donor's philanthropic values and philanthropic motivations. And those don't change regardless of economic circumstance. So we need to continue to have those relationships with our donors based on their philanthropic values and motivations and how those are aligned with the public service mission of our respective nonprofit organizations. We look at these economic data because of the wealth effect of charitable giving, right? And the wealth effect tends to influence how much people give and when, if at all. And what we also know about economic downturns is that recessions tend to most negatively affect our neighbors who are lower and moderate income. And they might be the most likely to either not be donating at all or maybe pulling back on their charitable giving when there's a recession. Our hope is that our medium and higher income donors can still be contributing even during times of economic downturn, especially when you see that during a recession, the average decline in charitable giving is just 0.5% after adjusting for inflation. In fact, during some recessions, charitable giving goes up. And so it's just something to be mindful of as we move forward to continue to build those trusting relationships with donors. And here's another reason. When there's a crisis or an economic downturn, donors tend to stay with the nonprofits with which they have the closest, most trusting relationship. So you build a trusting relationship just for human dignity reasons alone, right? People made charitable gifts. We stay in touch with them. That's important in and of itself. But then they have this consequence of being more likely to donate to us from one year to the next, including when the economy suffers a downturn. One other key aspect to keep in mind is the best time to fundraise for a recession is before the recession. Do your best to build an operating surplus. And if you say, okay, Bill Stan, easier said than done. We do teach a method of fundraising for a surplus in our course, Principles and Techniques of Fundraising. So come to our course. We'll teach you how to do that. Or find your own ways to fundraise for a surplus as best as you can while continuing to build those trusting relationships. That surplus can help you for the rainy days that a recession can bring. Now, here's the ultimate implication for fundraising, regardless of the economy. Every day is a great day to tell your nonprofit story. Every day is a great day to be sharing your fundraising case for support, if we're in a recession or not. Be sure to visit us at the Fundraising School. We have 24 public courses that lead to 4 different certificates. We teach in person and online, and the same is true of our custom training. We can bring one of those courses directly to you, or we can take part of this course, part of another course, part of a course over here, maybe even some new research, fold all of that in. Think of that tailored piece of apparel as opposed to something off the rack. And we can bring that custom training directly to your nonprofit, your region, your association, anywhere in the United States, in person, online, anywhere across the world. We also have our quarterly webinars. We have these weekly podcasts. We also have our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, now out in its 5th edition. All the information about the Fundraising School is available online at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. As always, I'm grateful for my colleagues producing the Fundraising School's First Day podcast, Mike Anthony and Jennifer Boffman. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and now you are more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.